This is the Overdue Homework Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, everybody. I'm here with Trav, and I'm Drew.
And I'm Trav.
I like that a lot.
Yes.
All right, so this is the Overdue Homework Podcast, and I would like to tell everybody about our mission statement. The reason why we're doing this podcast. I'd say the number one reason we're doing this podcast is to bring the 80s and 90s media to the forefront, bring it back to attention. Guess it doesn't need a whole heck of a lot of help right now. It seems pretty popular, but why not bring it back to the forefront even more?
Definitely.
Yeah. And then the other big reason we decided to do this podcast was to literally catch each other up on the things that we missed in the 80s and 90s. And not only what each other have missed, but you, the listener, what you have missed. Because if you're listening to this podcast, most likely you haven't seen or watched or listened. I guess seen and watched is the same thing to these things. So, yeah. Plus, it's really fun to relive these movies, TVs, and video games as adults, right?
Exactly.
Right. I guess that brings us to what our format is going to be. Like, we're going to literally explain right now what the format is. So, it's going to be introduction, a.k.a. what we're doing right now.
Exactly. Bada bing.
And then we'll be going into the homework review, which there's no homework review for this week, but we'll get to that again later. Then we'll end the show with our homework assignment. So that means either Trav hasn't seen it, I haven't seen it, or if we both have seen it, that means you probably haven't seen it. So that's your homework assignment. Pretty self-explanatory.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Right. And then every show will be, outroed by Trav. So I guess I would like to let the listener know kind of like our backstory a little bit.
For sure.
We happen to share a day job. If I remember correctly, I was talking about The Walking Dead with a coworker of mine when you came out of nowhere and like, are you guys talking about The Walking Dead?
Sounds like me. That sounds like me. I always thought it was Game of Thrones.
Oh,
because I forgot. Did you watch Walking Dead?
Yes.
You did watch Walking
Dead?
Yes. Okay.
It could have been either one.
It was either one. It was around season 6 of Game of Thrones, I'm pretty sure.
Definitely.
I heard a little something. Hey, so you watch Game of Thrones? But yes, Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, and then we kind of started swapping some shows to watch for each other, too.
Yeah, we did. And the big difference between Walking Dead and Game of Thrones is I actually finished Game of Thrones.
True. I also haven't finished Walking Dead. I actually loved Walking Dead more than Game of Thrones, even at its pinnacle. I still like Game of Thrones, but obviously the ending has changed my opinion a little bit of that show.
Yeah.
But Walking Dead, I don't know what it was, but I think it was Rick leaving the show just made me kind of give up on it. Just like, done and over with it. You can't just get rid of my main character and expect me to care anymore.
So that was the middle of season 8, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right before the mid-season break. I gave
Right.
it one other episode and then I was done.
Yeah, Rick left, and then, spoiler alert, I can't remember his son right now. His son died.
Yep, his son's dead. Carl's gone.
Carl, and I was like, I can't believe I couldn't remember that. And I was like, I guess I'm out. I don't know.
That about does it for me on Walking Dead.
There was so much time invested in that. I should probably go back and finish it anyways.
Yeah.
But on to where the real connection was probably formed. So like 9/29/17 was when the Super Nintendo Classic was released. And I don't remember how we started talking about it, but we ended up deciding to go wait in line at our local GameStop.
Mm-hmm. Overnight.
Overnight. I think I picked you up at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Something like that.
It was something ridiculous like that. We had snacks, right?
Snacks.
We had drinks.
Which was maybe too many drinks.
Definitely too many drinks.
Too many drinks.
And we
non-alcoholic.
had... Yes, non-alcoholic, of course. So I'm pretty sure it was Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper.
23
flavors.
23 flavors. There was snacks, candy.
Candy, yes.
What kind of candy?
I think we had Skittles. Didn't you have a big old bag of Skittles?
I did have a big, yes, it was a big old bag of Skittles. So high amounts of sugar, high amounts of caffeine, plenty of carbonation, I guess, all involved there.
And then didn't the grocery store not open till 6?
It was something like that. It was a 24-hour grocery store. It no longer is a 24-hour grocery store, and both of us did need to use the restroom, and it was a solid block and a half way, so we took times running over to the grocery store to use the bathroom. And we definitely spent the whole time. You brought 2 3DSs, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yes, with the 3DS Mario Party.
Yep.
And we didn't touch them.
We didn't touch them at all.
No, we just managed to talk to each other the whole time, and it was pretty cool. So, like, that's where the friendship was formed, was sitting outside in September, surprisingly cold September morning.
Waiting to get something to relive our childhood, which is exactly some of the content that we're going to be talking about in this podcast.
Yeah, 100%. And you could say that maybe the whole impetus of this podcast was probably formed that day.
Probably.
It probably was. I mean, we both discovered that we had a lot of the same interests when it came to video games, especially video games. I don't remember how much TV and movies we talked at that point, but it was probably wasn't too much.
Not too much, just the current stuff that was on.
Right, and so that was 5 years ago. It was crazy because I thought that we probably became friends in about 2018, 2019. I was surprised that it was 2017. Time flies. The older you get, the faster it gets.
It really does.
There's a name for that. Spatial dilation? I don't remember. There's a name for it where, like, the older you get, like, each minute is worth less of your life. So it feels like it goes by quicker. So, like, when you're 10, an hour of your life, that's a bad example. So when you're 10, a year of your life is a tenth of your life, right?
Right.
So when you're 30, that's a third of your, not a third of your life.
A 30th.
The 30th of your life.
You're like, psh.
Yeah, so it just, the older you get, the faster it goes by, type of thing. So we didn't do any of these, like, good conversation topic that morning, that night and morning probably would have been, Trav, what's your favorite 3 movies of all time?
Definitely. And then we're going to get into that right now.
We're getting into it right now.
Let's see. So I put Dumb and Dumber. Jim Carrey. Huge Jim Carrey fan. Anything Adam Sandler and Jim Carrey back in the day, that was my wheelhouse for sure. We got Happy Gilmore. Speaking of Adam Sandler. Good for Happy Gilmore, my God. And then to finish it out, I got The Breakfast Club.
Great choices.
All pretty much comedies. Maybe The Breakfast Club isn't a straight comedy, but that was definitely my wheelhouse. So yeah, looking at the years here, 1994 for Dumb and Dumber, 96 for Happy Gilmore, and Breakfast Club was before I was born, 1985, but something my dad had, so I saw it multiple times.
The Breakfast Club was definitely one of those TBS perennial movies.
Oh, for sure.
On all the time in the 90s, and I remember watching it on TV quite often. Edited 90s style, so like everything was cut out. It was on, major cable network even, but I remember thinking, this movie is so old. I can't believe how old this movie is. And that was probably in the mid-90s, and The Breakfast Club came out. What year did The Breakfast Club come out?
85.
85. So it was maybe not even 10 years old. Like, that just goes, that's pretty nuts. And it wasn't that old of a movie, honestly. So,
but it still holds up so well. It's such a simple premise, but I still just love that movie so much.
Yeah, anything by John Hughes. I don't know what it was. I mean, we could probably do a whole episode on John Hughes alone. I don't know what it was about the way he wrote movies and directed them, but he really had a finger on the pulse of what it was like to be a teenager in that time,
Definitely.
It'd be an interesting episode in itself. So, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about with your movies?
That's it.
So, I guess my 3 movies, we've made multiple lists. And this is the list that I finally came with. Would be 93's Jurassic Park.
Definitely.
It was a movie experience. Like, it was sort of like the subject that we're going to be talking about. I bet this movie probably took a page out of our homework at the end of this episode's playbook. And it's the way it markets, the way it appealed to children, even though, do you want a 9-year-old seeing Jurassic Park?
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Might scare them to death. But.
Yeah. That was definitely I remember saying, can we go see Jurassic Park, please? Because it was just quite the event. Commercials were inescapable on television. And it was a Spielberg film, which when you're a child of the 90s, you tell your parents you want to see a Steven Spielberg film, they would say, yeah, let's go to a Steven Spielberg film.
Yeah.
Well worth the money. Much cheaper movies at the time, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
The second movie that I would probably say is in my top 3 is The Neverending Story. I debated back and forth on whether or not to go with The Neverending Story 1 or The Neverending Story 2. For the longest time, I was going to say Neverending Story 2 is the one that I watched the most. It was on TV the most. And then I thought about it, and I thought about it. And I had to go with the first Neverending Story, The Neverending Story.
Which I have never seen. Either, of course. I haven't seen the second. Oh, I saw the second one, but the first one. Have not seen that.
If you'd like a treat, now this is not just directed to you, Trav. This is directed to everybody. Google on YouTube. Go to YouTube and search The Neverending Yeah. It's very funny. It's just the main character. I'm not even going to talk about it because if we do it as homework, it'll be a very funny thing. And
for sure.
And then our one overlap movie, Dumb and Dumber.
Dumb and Dumber.
1994. I don't think I saw this one in the theater.
I did not.
It was probably too raunchy to go see as a 10-year-old.
Definitely.
But it's a movie that holds up today. The sequels, Dumb and Dumberer.
Dumb and Dumberer.
That
was the one without Jim Carrey.
So that was the prequel.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, that prequel, not good. And then
not good. No.
I never saw the sequel. Did you
see the sequel? I think it's funny because it's them again, but it's not the original.
Yeah,
obviously. For sure. But I kind of like that they pick up where they left off, and the girl that he slept with, Freda Felcher, he has a kid with. So then she is coming back, and of course he has a crush on her, not knowing that it's his daughter or something like that. So.
Well, now I don't need to see it. I guess that's one thing that I should have said in the introduction is this is going to be a spoiler-filled podcast.
Oh, definitely.
So once we do start assigning homework, if you haven't seen what we assigned or you haven't played or it's going to be full of spoilers.
Full of spoilers. And
I mainly chose Dumb and Dumber because of its amazing 90s soundtrack.
It's so good.
It's so good. Like absolutely. That anytime I hear that song on the radio, which becomes rarer and rarer these days, it's automatically I think of Dumb and Dumber. Automatically.
There's just I've been quoting that movie my entire life.
Yes. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. Just handing out hundreds. Here you go.
Here you go.
Mm-hmm. Since we did our movies, what do you think you would choose for television?
Television's a little different, a little more on the animated side for myself. For my first show, I put Dragon Ball Z, which the Japanese air date was in 1989, the year I was born, but it was 96 for America here, and I definitely remember biking home all the time to not miss any Spirit Bomb action when he was fighting Frieza.
You mean the Spirit Bomb that lasted about 8 episodes?
8 episodes. Day after day, I'm biking home waiting to see that thing get thrown down. And nope, building it up.
You are, and listeners, this needs to be known to you. Trav is a die-hard Dragon Ball Z fan.
Die hard. Still to this day. I love Dragon Ball Super. I rewatched DBZ, Dragon Ball Super. I've got a Vegeta tattoo on my right leg. I got a Goku tattoo on my left leg.
Some bad A tattoos. That's 100% the truth.
For sure. Shout out Grey Duck tattoo.
Hey, free plug is a good deal.
For my second show, non-animated, but Friends. Friends is a show I grew up with. My dad watched it from the very beginning, 94. So I've had it in my life my entire life. I still consider it my favorite comedy of all time. It's my comfort show. I put it on and throw a 30-minute timer when I go to bed. Always watch an episode of Friends before I go to bed. Never gets old for me.
Is Friends your The Office?
Friends is my The Office, but I love The Office too.
Yeah.
I love a lot of sitcoms, but yeah, Friends is my end-all be-all for
That's
sure.
awesome.
If I had to pick one to live with for the rest of my life, it'd be Friends. I've seen it the most.
How many times do you think you've seen the series completely?
From beginning to end, being generous, I've probably seen it through 25 times.
Whoa. I did not expect 25.
So many times. I mean, more than that if you can count all the reruns on TV where they skip holiday episodes and certain episodes and stuff. But since it being on Netflix, and then I bought it on Blu-ray when it got taken off of Netflix, and introducing this friend to it and this person to it, 25 times. And I feel like I'm being modest.
Do you have a favorite episode? I want a favorite episode, and I want your favorite friend.
Ooh. Favorite friend is probably Joey, even though Joey, it's like 1A and Chandler's 1B for me, for sure. But I love all of them. Ross doesn't get enough love either. I love Ross. Favorite episode? God, that's next to impossible, but if I have to, the first episode I think of when I think if I want to put one on and I just want to laugh is the engagement episode. So the first episode of season 7, when Monica's engaged and Joey gets a job playing a 19-year-old, and that's just too much. Chandler playing PS1 in the background, and he comes out with his boxers tucked into his shirt and his New York Knicks jersey, and I love that whole episode, and that's where Rachel brings up to Ross bonus night, and then he gets all, we're gonna score again, and that does not happen. There's just too many good things in that episode.
Random question: what happened to his monkey? Like in the series,
his monkey started humping everything.
Oh yes, they had to put a diaper on him for that reason.
Well, no, they didn't have to put a diaper on him for that reason. But he was pooping in Monica's shoes. And all this stuff. He lost the monkey once, and then he got sent to a zoo because of the humping issue. He had to get rid of him, and then eventually his monkey becomes famous later in the show, and he's the Monkey Shine Monkey for some beer company later. And that's a pretty funny episode too.
Oh, that's good. I like that a lot.
And then for my final show, rounding out the 90s, I'm actually surprised I don't have any Nicktoons on my list, but Ed, Ed, and Eddie, 1999.
1999. We ventured a guess at that. We ventured a guess at that at one point, but 99 on the nose.
I think because I was 10 years old, so I was a little bit older when this aired. I've just got more recollection of funny episodes of this show. So.
Yeah, that show is classic, and it was one that I ran into a little bit later in life. Like I bet I started watching that maybe in about 2007 or 2008 and reruns on Cartoon Network. Sure. And that show's really good. That's really good. It really is. It's very funny. It still holds up to this day. It's a very good show.
What do you got for me, Drew?
Well, for TV, number one with a bullet is probably, I keep saying is probably. It's number one on my list, so it definitely is number one. Rocko's Modern Life. And that ran from 92 to 96. And I think of like podcast day is a very dangerous day. That show, the Sucko-Matic, that first episode where he gets that mail order vacuum, and ends up destroying the world basically with it. And the whole thing, Filbert, turn the page, wash your hands. Turn the page, wash your hands. That show, it was
and then Heifer.
Heifer. Constantly eating at Choky Chicken, which if you only saw the last few seasons, it was renamed to Chewy Chicken because KFC did not like the name Choky Chicken.
Yeah.
And Heifer literally dies in one of the episodes by choking on a whole chickens. Goes and sees Peaches and HE double hockey sticks, which that was, the word hell was written in that episode, and there was just a single line through the double L's. When it aired originally, which is unbelievable to think that
would never happen now.
No, the word
hell canceled before it's even out.
Yes. That show was definitely the Ren and not Ren and Stimpy light, but it wasn't quite as gross as Ren and Stimpy, but there was definitely plenty of adult jokes in Rocko's Modern Life. My number 2 is going to be Star Trek The Next Generation. It was something that I watched occasionally. I believe it was on at 9 p.m. When I was a kid. So I'd watch it occasionally when I would be up late or something like that. It was more revisited when I was a little bit older and watched it a lot more in reruns. And then, of course, once it made its way to Netflix, I decided to really buckle down and watch the whole series. I slept through a fair number of episodes, especially in those first seasons, and I'm definitely not going to go back and watch them. They were fairly boring for the most part, but as a whole, Star Trek: The Next Generation is hard to beat for hard sci-fi, as they say. Not so much on the fantasy side. It's trying to be based in technology,
Yeah. Now, is Next Generation the one that has Xavier from X-Men?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay.
I was
okay.
like, see, I just saw the Batman today, and there is a preview where Professor Xavier makes an appearance in voice only.
Oh.
Yes, that's all I'm going to leave it at. So that's what I went to right away. I didn't think about Jean-Luc Picard.
Gonna do me like that.
Yeah, I'm going to do you like that, I guess. Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart, perennial Star Trek star, as much as he may not like it. I mean, he did go back to the role now on not on Paramount Plus. It's on CBS. Is that Paramount Plus?
It is Paramount Plus.
It used to be CBS All Access. Yes. Now it's on Paramount Plus, and I have not watched that at all. But I really want to watch that because I'd really love to see where that last two-parter with Jean-Luc Picard and Q went after. I'd really like to see where that went. But yeah. Star Trek: The Next Generation is a solid number 2 for me. I just absolutely love that series from beginning to end, even in all its hokiness and all its sound studio shooting. Like, it was just, it was very, very TV for the time. And then my third is going to be Cowboy Bebop, anime, not Suncoast. Can't remember the name of it right now, I guess. But 1998, I discovered that one on television on Adult Swim. And when those first notes from Yoko Kanno's Tank are in that opening, it's just goosebumps. Just thinking about it right now, it's just goosebumps.
So we both have a Toonami show.
Yes, both have a Toonami show. Just anytime I hear, let's get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam. It's just like, oh my goodness, I cannot wait. Like, and interestingly enough, in a YouTube video that I just saw, I found out that Pierre LeFou, which is my favorite episode of Cowboy Bebop, about this government test subject that is basically granted superhuman powers and goes crazy and goes on a giant killing rampage. The name is from a 1960s French art house film, and I had no idea that was a thing. So on Pierre LeFou, I guess I have to watch this thing because I would estimate that the episode and the character was named this for some reason in relation to the movie that was made in the 60s.
For sure.
Are you ready to move on to video games?
I am.
All right, let's hear them. Top 3 video games.
Video games, top 3. All Super Nintendo games. First game, Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
Classic.
Still play it to this day. One of my favorite couch co-op games. Second game, Secret of Mana. Mana. I say Mana.
Me too. I say
Some
Mana.
Some people say Mana.
I think it's Mana.
We're going with Mana. Secret of Mana.
It'll be Mana forever on this podcast.
The cool thing about that game too, when I was a kid, is it was 3-player if you had the multi-tap for the Super Nintendo.
So you could use the multi-tap, but it was only 3-player.
It was only 3-player. There's only 3 characters. You got your main badass fighter, and then you've got the mage, and then she's your cleric. So whoever's third gets stuck with the cleric.
It's one that I never played, but I definitely need to play it. But I'll have to play it probably on an emulator because the copies are ridiculously expensive. I guess I could borrow it from you, but I would feel bad if something happened to it.
Otherwise, it's on PlayStation 4 as well, too.
Oh, well.
Remade in 3D.
Oh.
And then for rounding out the list, Super Mario All-Stars. 4 games in one, mostly for Super Mario 3, one of my favorite games ever. But I got the Super Mario All-Stars before I ever had any of the Nintendo games, so that was the first time I had played them, and then I went backwards. So,
Do you think that was something that was pretty common for people that are in your age group, that they may not have played those on the NES, but then they got the All-Stars?
I think so, yeah.
All-Stars. I keep saying like All-Stars.
All-Stars.
Yeah. All-Stars.
Yes, All-Stars. I think so. Well, at least for me, I was an only child, so I didn't have any older brothers. I mean, there were certainly some people that had a Nintendo ahead of time, but yeah, I think a lot of us went back and got Nintendo afterwards.
Yeah, for sure.
It wasn't crazy expensive to go get an older system back then. It was actually cheap. You could go get a Nintendo at a garage sale or something.
Yeah, probably for like $10-15.
For sure.
And that's how it was forever. It's just not the case anymore since the pandemic.
Yep. And yeah, that rounds out my list. What do you got, Drew?
So for my top 3 video games, they're going to go, I got one Nintendo, two Nintendo, excuse me, and one PlayStation game. Probably my favorite NES Nintendo game is going to be Kickle Cubicle. And that was an arcade game by Irem, the publisher. That was in 1988. It was released in arcades in Japan. And then it was 1990. It was on the NES. And that's the only version I ever played. I never played the arcade version. And you basically, it's a puzzle game where you freeze enemies. You then kick those enemies to create land on these islands to solve puzzles and collect these bags of sand that look like teddy bears, but they're bags of sand. That's what that's the graphical power of your Nintendo system was in 1990. And it was one of those games where I could just sit down and play it. I think there's 5 worlds in the game. And, making it all the way to the end is just one of those endurance feats where if you're going to make it all the way to the end, or unless you want to write down 40-digit keys to start somewhere, you know what I mean?
No, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was a very fun game. It was one of those games that I was able to pick up as a 8-year-old, and just play and have lots of fun with. I did look at other games that Irem had published to see if I had played any of them. It was a whole lot of I have no idea what any of these games are.
Yeah.
I did run across one that I thought was funny. It was called Holy Diver, and it was released in 1989. Are you aware of the song Holy Diver?
Yes, from Guitar Hero.
Okay, yes, from Guitar Hero. That Ronnie James Dio, Holy Diver. I'll spare you singing it.
I almost just sang we're going to not do that.
We're definitely not going to do that. So I saw that and it stuck out to me. I'm like, did they make this game because the song was successful? Was it a chicken or the egg? I didn't look it up, so I will never know. I just thought it was interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah. So after that, my number 2 is Metal Gear Solid. That was a game that I would rent quite often, and eventually rented it so often that it was bought for me. Just my dad got sick of renting it all the time, so I came home from school, and there it was. Here you go, Metal Gear Solid. It looked like a used copy, but I didn't care. That was a Konami game, and again, I went through a big list of Konami games, and the most interesting one that I didn't even think about was the fact that X-Men the arcade game in 1992 was a Konami game.
Ooh.
I don't recall seeing Konami on the startup screen in that game at all.
I don't either, actually.
I was kind of surprised to see that. So, I mean, you can't go wrong with Konami. You can't go wrong with Metal Gear Solid. You can't go wrong with Hideo Kojima. However you want to say it. I'm probably not saying it correctly, so that's just the way it goes. And then my third, another overlap for the two of us, is going to be Super Mario Bros. 3. I'm going to choose the Nintendo version just because that's the one that I had. I bought Super Mario All-Stars later on in life, and there is definitely, when you're talking Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario Bros. All-Stars, it seems like there's some things that are quite a bit different. Not quite a bit different, at least minutely different, where you will fall through platforms where button pushes don't act the same way that they should, and I don't know if that's just code lost in translation. I don't know how they coded these games, if they redid it from the beginning or anything like that. It brings a new level of challenge to those games. And then lastly, with our top 3 movies, TV, and video games, I'd like to bring up the fact that The Simpsons isn't on either of our lists, which is sacrilege to some people. And once I went through this, I was like, The Simpsons aren't on this list. And I guess the only way that I can like justify it is the fact that I stopped watching after about the year 2000. I don't know if it was me just getting a little bit older, if the show quality degraded, but if it's an episode from 89 to 96, I can probably quote you almost any line from those episodes. It gets to the point where my wife, something will happen in public, and I'll be like, hey, this reminds me of that time this happened in The Simpsons. And she just it's like, I just don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I never really sat down and watched The Simpsons. What's weird, though, is I had some of the video games, like Bart's Nightmare. I remember that was an arcade game, but I also had the Super Nintendo game where you're walking down the street and the papers fall down and you got to jump in the paper and do different games. Yep, but yeah, I never really watched too much of The Simpsons.
The Simpsons games, especially on the Nintendo, were always really hard.
Super hard.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Like,
I never beat this game I'm talking about.
No, and even Bart Simpson versus the Space Mutants, if you don't plan out the way you use your spray paint, you might as well just hit the reset button and start over, because you got to spray paint these objects and turn them purple. And more than once, I'm just like, oh, reset.
Yep.
You got anything else, Trav?
Let's see. I did think about, so my parents were not together growing up, so I had certain movies at my mom's house, and I was thinking about just how amazing these 5 movies are, so I had to read you this list. These were the 5 movies that I had that were mine at my mom's house. Okay. Happy Gilmore.
Great.
On my list. Jurassic Park.
Great.
On your list. Mrs. Doubtfire.
Classic.
Robin Williams. We didn't mention him yet.
He was drive-by fruiting. That was a terrible. That was terrible, Mrs. Doubtfire.
Let's see. And then we got Nightmare Before Christmas, which is still
classic.
My favorite animated movie of all time.
It's a Tim Burton.
And Mouse Hunt.
Mouse Hunt?
Have you ever seen Mouse Hunt?
No, I've never heard of it.
Oh my gosh, I love this movie.
What's it about?
It's literally a mouse that terrorizes these 2 people. Their dad dies, and they get left this really old house, and this mouse is in there, and it's kind of like Home Alone, but instead of McAllister, it's the mouse. He's outsmarting these 2 people the whole time.
That is interesting.
And eventually they have to hire an exterminator, who is Christopher Walken.
What?
And the mouse basically destroys Christopher Walken. I'll leave it at that, but it's a really funny movie. It'd be heavy appropriate as well.
Oh, so it's Home Alone, but with Christopher Walken and a mouse.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. So funny.
Hey, mouse, get over here. That was another really bad impersonation, but I'm trying here.
And now, so that was my 5 that were mine, but I have to know if you've seen this movie, because I can't believe that I've seen this movie, but my mom had this movie at her house. Serial Mom. Have you ever heard or seen of that movie?
You know, the name...
1994.
The name, like, hit something in my brain. Like...
Have you seen enough Friends to know who Chandler's dad is?
No.
Okay. Well, his dad is someone who is a quote-unquote used to be a woman, but is a guy and now is a woman.
So he's a transgendered woman.
I believe so.
Okay.
But it's obviously a real female playing the part in the show, and that's who this serial mom is.
I don't think that holds up very well in Friends.
No, it does not.
That's an interesting tie-in. I really enjoy that. I guess I don't have anything else either, so we can probably move on to our homework review.
Let's do it.
There's no homework to review. This is the first episode, so it's the first day of school. There's no homework. Lucky you.
Lucky me, lucky you.
Yeah. So normally in this segment, we talk about any personal stories that we would have relating to the homework assignment from the previous episode. We definitely try to make some interesting observations and further facts. We want to be factual about the information that we share about these movies, about these TV shows, and about the video games that we're going to play. And we just want to make it interesting and entertaining. And then I'm going to try to make some sort of arbitrary rating system. Like, give me a movie. Any movie. Pick a movie from the 80s or 90s.
Billy Madison.
Billy Madison gets 5 Shooter McGavins out of 6.
All right. I like it.
Something like that. That's what I'm looking for. Hopefully more funny than that. And then the theme that I'd like to keep through this whole podcast, and this segment included, is we want to have a candid and original conversation about all of these topics and try to just be as down to earth and real about it as we possibly can.
For sure.
I guess with that done, I have nothing else to say about our homework review since like I said, there is no homework to review. So, on to the homework assignment. Would you like to tell us what this homework assignment is, Trav?
This homework assignment is Tim Burton's 1989 film,
Batman. I'm Batman. I'm Batman. Gotta love that. I guess I want to start off with some movie facts. I'm just going to list off some facts here. Got about, what do I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Got 7 facts. I think I counted 7, 4. Yeah, 7 maybe. It was released 6/22/89. Had a $40 million opening weekend, which I'd say that's pretty dang good for 1989. $40 million. You're pretty happy with $40 million nowadays on an opening weekend.
4 days before I was born. Phew.
And, that $40 million weekend went to a $250 million North American box office with $160 million internationally for a total of $411 million. Do you have any idea what $411 million works out to today's money? If this movie was released today in 2022, what that would be for a domestic box office?
I wish I did, but I'm going to guess it's at least like double.
Pretty dang close, $931 million. That's just domestically. That's just in North America.
That's crazy.
Or excuse me, that is also internationally, which a $1 billion movie is pretty crazy anytime you look at it. So a movie that released the same year as Batman did in 1989 was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So the third part of a major trilogy, which could easily be the subject of a homework assignment. But I'm assuming you've seen... Wow.
I have not seen Indiana Jones.
None of them?
None of them.
Wow. Okay. Homework. And that's 80s, so that definitely, skews that way. It was bigger than Indiana Jones at the box office that year. And that Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade had not only Harrison Ford, obviously, but it had, I'm blanking on his name, which is really Sean Connery. And that's embarrassing that I couldn't think of Sean Connery's name. But yeah, he was Indiana Jones' dad. So that's pretty nuts that it was a bigger movie. If you had to guess other big actors from around that time that would be up for the role of Batman, what do you name some actors that you think would be good for Batman?
I really can't think of like action stars from back then.
Just any male actor.
Steven Seagal.
See, there you go. So
no, that would be an interesting Batman.
That would be a very interesting Batman. I'll tell you one person that was up for the role, at least reportedly up for the role. Tom Selleck.
That's crazy.
Would he have shaved the mustache to be Batman, or would we have the first Batman with a mustache?
Yep, mask doesn't fit. gotta have the mustache.
Better yet, I like the idea of them just cutting out right under the nose so they could keep the mustache.
That would be perfect.
I'm glad Tom Selleck wasn't the Batman.
Sorry, Tom.
And then if you had to choose somebody to be the Joker from that era, who do you think would be a good Joker?
Well, I think they probably picked the best Joker.
Yeah, they definitely did.
I did hear that Robin Williams was up for the part as well, and when Jack Nicholson was not very interested, didn't know if he wanted to take it, they offered it to Robin Williams, and he actually accepted the role, and then when they went back to Nicholson to tell him that he was going to do it, then Nicholson decided to do it, and that kind of rubbed Robin the wrong way as well.
And that's a total ego thing from Jack Nicholson, right?
Oh, definitely.
Total ego
Just
thing.
strong arming him.
One of the other people that was considered is David Bowie. That would have been interesting to see David Bowie, especially have you seen The Labyrinth?
I have not.
The Labyrinth! If he would have played it that way, or even like The Man Who Fell to Earth, you can see David Bowie's wiener in that movie if you're ever interested in that.
Yikes.
One final crazy fact. The original Batmobile was bought by Jeff Dunham. Yes, that Jeff Dunham, the ventriloquist Jeff Dunham, owns the original Batmobile. How do you feel about that, Trav?
I wonder why.
Must have been a really big Batman fan.
Is he out cruising in that thing, or is that just a for show type of thing?
I would, if it's drivable, I would drive it. I think I remember seeing that he he had to change something within the Batmobile so that he could actually drive it on the street. Like he had to swap the engine out or something like that to make it street legal. So I would assume that he probably drives it.
I mean, if I was rich, I'd probably do crazier things with my money.
Of the Batmobiles, which one would you want to have?
I love the Batmobile in The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
I love like the tank type feel.
Yeah.
Like you ain't getting into this Batmobile.
That's
type thing.
yeah. No, that's a really good. I want to know your opinion on that after you see the newest Batman movie.
Yeah.
I would probably choose the Michael Keaton Batman's Batmobile or the Adam West Batmobile. We haven't mentioned Adam West once yet, but we're not really going towards that one very much. The Adam West Batmobile is just one of those things. I just remember watching that show a lot as a kid, and it'd be an interesting piece of pop culture to have something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm going to move on to why Batman 89, Tim Burton's Batman, why it matters and why you should care to do it as a homework assignment and why we're actually assigning it. Danny Elfman and Prince did the soundtrack, not together. It was actually two different soundtracks that were released separately, which is interesting enough in itself. And Danny Elfman is the composer that created The Simpsons opening theme, among other things. So, I mean, there's a lot of panache right there to have Danny Elfman be scoring your film. And personally, I'm a really big Prince fan. And this is about... So Prince's career was probably peaking, maybe on the way down a little bit in 1989, so I can see why he'd want to... It seems out of character for him to do a movie soundtrack. That's not something that he has complete creative control over because he was just that type of guy.
Right.
So I can understand why he would do it. And the songs that he chose, we'll talk about those songs a lot more in the next episode because they're some pretty crazy songs, that's for sure. And this Batman took the idea of Batman was and really flipped it on its head. Because Adam West Batman was campy. It was a darn near a comedy. You know, it was...
Yeah.
You couldn't take anything in it seriously. When you have stuff like shark repellent on your belt and stuff like that, have you seen the Batman movie from that era?
No.
So there's a scene where he has to, I believe it's the Penguin. It might have been the Joker. He drops a bomb, one of those comical bombs with the fuse in it, like you see in like a Looney Tunes cartoon. And Batman catches it. Adam West Batman catches it. And he's running around trying to get rid of it. So like he runs over to this area and there's like a baby in a baby carriage. So then he starts running over to the end of this dock and there's a mother duck and her ducklings. And he starts running all over the place with this thing. It's just, it's a comedy at that point. You
Definitely.
know what I mean? And Tim Burton's Batman, he made it dark. He made it gritty. He made it interesting again for the audience that wanted it, for those 20-something-year-olds at the time that wanted to see a gritty, awesome Batman in the theater. He definitely made it dark again. And, you know, the main reason why this movie matters, why Batman, Tim Burton's Batman 1989, Michael Keaton's Batman, whatever you want to call it, is Batmania. So there's a really great YouTube video by a guy named Cinema Tyler, and he has this series called Cinema Stories on YouTube, so you can find all this information and a lot more information. He's got like a 30-minute video on this, so he does a really good job of explaining it. I'm just basically paraphrasing it and getting some good facts out of it. Batman changed the way movies are marketed. So we are very used to the way marketing a movie is all this huge, all-encompassing thing where it's TV ads, video game ads, YouTube ads, you know, toys, all of that stuff. Fast food tie-ins, all that stuff. And that was besides George Lucas and Star Wars, it just wasn't really the way movies were done at the time. Time Warner, who was the studio behind this movie, they owned all facets of Batman. So they owned the record label that released the records. They owned the movie theater, not the movie theater. They owned the movie studio. They owned everything and anything that they didn't own, they licensed out to anybody that wanted to buy the license. There was over 300 licensed products and things like Batman cereal, which we still see movie tie-in cereals to this day. The Batman alarm clock. And on the very high end, a $500 rhinestone studded jacket. And I highly recommend trying to find a picture of this thing. It's in the video.
Oh my.
It is definitely something else. Did you own any Batman licensed products like from this movie?
No, I did not.
No, none. I had a couple of there was a couple of things when I saw them in this YouTube video that I was like, oh man, I had that action figure. There's this action figure where his like belt comes out and had this like elasticy string on it, and it would snap back into him, and that lasted all of about a week before it broke.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes. And they did all this stuff. They owned all facets of the movie production and any way to make money off of it. So even if it was a flop, they'd still make tons of money on it. And of course, there was definitely counterfeit products. I don't recall ever owning any counterfeit products, but anytime anything like this is that big, there's going to be counterfeit products.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever had any counterfeit products from any type of movie? Like, do you remember those Simpsons Pogs from the 90s?
I had Pogs, but I don't remember Simpsons.
So
Pogs.
there was these Simpsons Pogs that were getting traded around my group of friends that were all in Spanish. I don't know where they came from, but all of a sudden there was this influx of Simpsons Pogs with all this Spanish lettering and wording on them. It's just, obviously counterfeit, non-licensed Simpsons stuff. So it's very, very 90s thing. Same thing with all the fake Oakleys that people would bring back from Mexico trips and stuff like that in high school. And then even Prince was part of the marketing. I mean, he was brought on to attract women and black audiences and to just broaden the appeal overall to make more money via the soundtrack. It was all to make money, just the way that those big corporations think about this stuff. And they just happened to have a really good director that had a clear vision for what he wanted to make this movie into. Mm-hmm. And they allowed Tim Burton to Tim Burton.
And it paid off.
It really did pay off. I mean, 200 million copies of the soundtrack alone. I mean, that's pretty insane for any album. There's CD sales, album sales are just not, that doesn't exist anymore. Not 200 million copies of anything ever. No. Maybe over a complete career, but definitely not for a single movie.
Yeah.
And I've already stated this, and I'll just state it again, but Batman set the standard on how to market a blockbuster film. And still use that same way today. If you see the way a movie is marketed, that is due to Batman. You can thank Batman. You can thank Time Warner. You can thank the corporate machine.
Yeah.
You can thank the corporate machine. Did you have anything that you wanted to add to that, Trav?
No, I'm pretty clueless when it comes to this 1989 Batman because I have never seen it. So I also have homework like everybody else.
That's why it's a good homework assignment.
Definitely.
I guess I don't have anything else when it comes to assigning our homework today. I'm sure we've gotten some emails, Trav. Have we gotten some emails?
Yep. Turns out we've gotten a few emails from future listeners.
Yeah. Emails of future past.
Yeah. So for our first one here comes from This Show Is Awesome 123 asks, what was your very first video game system?
The very first video game system that I played was the NES, the Nintendo. We had an Intellivision in the house. That was something that was in the house from before I was born that my dad had purchased. He's always been kind of into that video game stuff, and luckily I've been able to go back and play that Intellivision stuff, Pitfall and Frogger and Burger Time and that type of stuff. But the Nintendo was my first thing, and if I remember correctly, my dad won it in some sort of contest. I need to ask him about it. I meant to ask him about it.
So cool.
Yeah.
For me, it was the Super Nintendo. My dad got me the Super Mario World bundle, and I also had Street Fighter II Turbo. And I remember playing this as a kid all the time, I, of course, was trying to master all the moves in Street Fighter. My dad wasn't a big gamer, but he'd pick up the controller, and he'd pick Guile, and he'd button mash his way to victory, and he would just make me feel like crap. Like, he would be talking so much shit all the time to everybody. Oh, yeah, Trav, he's practicing, oh, he's going to do this and do that. I just smoked his ass. He'd say, just no mercy. So, yeah, it's probably good that my dad didn't game more than he did, because not so good. And for the next question here, it comes from High Hopes 420 asks, what was the first movie you saw in theaters?
I believe it was Land Before Time, which was one of those classic kids movies. I'm not sure the year that it came out. It was either Land Before Time or 5 An American Tail. I just remember them both being really big deals, and my family, we liked to go to movies, so I'm pretty sure it was Land Before Time.
Great movie.
Yeah, definitely a great movie.
For me, it was The Mask, 1994. That was the first movie I went to, again, with my dad. And the coolest part about this one is we had the theater completely to ourselves. So it was an awesome first experience for me. Jim Carrey for the first time. My dad's a goofball, spitting popcorn all over the theater. Sorry, New Ulm workers in 1994. I apologize for my dad. Next question we have is, True 90s Debate asks, Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network?
Nickelodeon with a bullet. Nickelodeon with a bullet.
Nickelodeon with a bullet.
Yeah.
So I've thought about it a little bit, and I think I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I actually am going to pick Cartoon Network.
Oh.
Which is crazy. I just, when I think about it, and you add in Toonami with all the other shows that I really like, it doesn't take anything away from Nickelodeon by any means. I could have a top 3 favorite shows just from Nickelodeon. Rocko's Modern Life, Ren and Stimpy, Angry Beavers, bada bing, bada bing, bada bing. But, yeah, I just think I like Cartoon Network better when you add in Dragon Ball Z and all those other shows.
I choose Nickelodeon because Nickelodeon was the theme of my summers growing up.
Yeah, for sure.
It was wake up in the morning, turn on Nickelodeon, and then turn it off eventually, maybe if I had to.
Yeah, I loved all the non-animated shows on Nickelodeon, like Legends of the Hidden Temple and all that stuff. I'm kind of surprised that neither of us had Rugrats on our lists at all. I feel like that was probably the show I saw the most growing up. And I love the show, but it didn't make either of our top 3.
It did not make either of our top 3s. I guess it's a little bit surprising just because, like you said, it was on so much, and maybe that's why people love it so much now. It's a great show. There's no doubt about it that it's a great show. I'm going to play devil's advocate right here. And why not? What about, like, Fox Kids? Like Animaniacs, Tiny Toon Adventures, like those are some very quality shows. Or like CBS's One Saturday Morning, like,
and Fox Kids that would have had like Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry and stuff. Or?
I think Looney Tunes was on Nickelodeon, if I remember correctly. I think Looney Tunes was on Nickelodeon, but it might have been on.
But Fox Kids would have had like X-Men,
in the
90s,
yep, Animaniacs,
Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh,
yep,
all that stuff.
What are like Freakazoid, some of those other Warner Brothers
Power
cartoons.
Rangers? Was that on Fox Kids?
I think it was. I think that was on Fox Kids. That was, there was some depth, like Steven Spielberg Presents Tiny Toon Adventures is a, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know why that didn't make my list. I really do love that show.
I love that show, yeah.
That was a really, really good show.
Next question comes from, man, I said I got a Gamecast. As PlayStation 1 or Nintendo 64?
PlayStation 1. I didn't own a 64 until I was in my 30s.
That's crazy to me. I'm actually N64. I had both of them, but I really liked all the couch co-op games on N64.
Yeah, I played video games a lot more solo, and that was way more on the PlayStation side of things.
Yeah. It's funny that determines my winner because I'm an only child, so I didn't really play that many couch co-op, but if we're going to PlayStation 2, that surpasses Nintendo for me. That's when I'm Sony all the way.
Right, yeah. Sony, I made a brief pit stop with Microsoft, but I'm back to Sony.
Next question. Waluigi wants to know, who is your go-to Mario Kart character?
Toad.
Toad. Mine is Mario.
It's always been Toad for me. I don't know why. Maybe I identify with him for some reason or another, but it's always been Toad.
Yep, mine's always Mario. I didn't have anybody to fight with, so I always got to pick player one. So I was Mario to the point where if anybody else picks Mario, and Mario Party especially, I will screw up because I'm going to watch Mario.
That is funny. Yeah, Toad. I always called him Todd.
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 And final question comes from Flawless Victory, asks Sub-Zero or Scorpion?
Scorpion.
Get
over here.
Get over here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, me too.
He was the first character that I ever played on Mortal Kombat, was Scorpion.
All right, well, that wraps up the questions. I want everyone to email us at overduehomework@gmail.com. Send us some questions, because, I'll keep making these up if I have to.
Yeah, please do.
I will keep making these up, but it'd be great to get some actual questions from some people. Send us in any topic ideas. Not that we're going to run out of content ideas here for, 10 years?
Yeah, it'll be a while. There's plenty of content.
We can bump some stuff up in the priority list, possibly. I wanted to give a shout out to my buddy Wade. He said don't call him out by name, but too bad. Wade, thanks for making the logo for us for our Overdue Homework podcast.
Yep.
He also has a podcast called The Forecast for his band Foreplay, where he is a badass keyboardist, saxophone player, and vocalist. So yeah, go check out those guys.
Man of many talents.
Many talents. And yeah, Drew, I'm excited to get into some of this content. It's been a lot of fun getting this thing going here. Next week's homework assignment reminder is the quintessential 1989 Tim Burton film, Batman. And yeah, thanks for listening, and tune in to next week's exciting episode of Dragon Ball. Tune in to next week's exciting episode of the Overdue Homework Podcast.